Hey, what's up? Hello. This is the TDEXPN NFL Podcast, episode number 6. As always, I am your host, TD himself, Trey Downey. And as always, my friend up in Baltimore, Maryland, Cliff Kidwell. How you doing this morning, Cliff?
What's going on, guys? I'm a little under the weather. It's a little cold up in here, and not because of the weather. It's because the Ravens are 1-4. It's a sad day here in Baltimore, Maryland. When the Ravens lose, this team feels it. So I'm actually really under a little bit of the weather, but it's not because of cold, man. It's because of the losses. The Ravens lose, and it just beats me down, Trey. It just beats me down. I finally understand what the Bucs were feeling, for so many years. I'm not used to this, Trey. I'm not used to this.
You're going to have to get used to it because I think you're in for a very long season. You might want to start – if I were you, like how I did last year once the Bucs were that horrible, I started watching more college football to see who we would get in the draft. So I'm going to suggest that to you. And,
you know what? That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. See, 1-4, you're right there with Detroit and all of those teams is competing for that number one draft pick. The Bucs did a great job of blowing a huge lead to New Orleans in the second half of Week 17 last year to get that number one draft pick. I hope your Ravens follow the same suit, and then maybe we can get somebody in there to replace Joe Flacco since his true successor has gone on to Buffalo and done great things.
Wow. I mean, just slow your roll there, buddy. Slow your roll there, Trey.
But, a great thing about today is probably for the first time, people are listening to us on iTunes. The podcast is now up on iTunes. Just go into your podcast app on your iPhone, or if you just get on iTunes on your computer and search TDEXPN, find us, subscribe on iTunes. Episodes 2 through 5 are also up on iTunes as well. You can download those, listen to them anytime for your ears' pleasure. And, every week it's going to be right up there on iTunes as well as TDEXPN.podomatic.com. So 2 great ways to listen to us now. Big things coming in the future on iTunes. This podcast is going to continue to grow, and we've got a great show for you today. As always, we're going to talk about our most intriguing and least intriguing game from last week. Most impressive, least impressive, you know how it goes. And then this week, our game/list is we're going to take a look at some veteran players that could be moved before the trade deadline. We're going to tell you whether the team should move them and what would be the ideal team for that player to move to. And then we're going to
get what, Trey? I actually like this time of year. It's when teams are running around and scrambling. The teams are suffering. They say these last-minute moves to save their season. It's a very exciting time. This is time we've seen the big trades like Clinton Portis and Champ Bailey back in the day. These are the times when these trade moves happen. So this is an exciting time there, Trey.
Yeah, it's going to be teams that are either making a last-ditch effort to save their season, or a team, that they know their season's over and they know they're trying to rebuild, that they want to, get some pieces, get some extra draft picks to come back in the future. We're also going to talk about our betting pick of the week. I've got that. Cliff's got his fantasy pick of the week. We're going to tell you what game to watch this weekend, and then we're going to pick all of our games. And that's how it goes. But we're going to start off with our most intriguing and least intriguing game of last week. And actually, most intriguing. We never pick a least intriguing game of the week. But my most intriguing game of the week last week was Cincinnati and Seattle. And Cincinnati, people were begging for them to face a really good team and be victorious. And they did it over Seattle in very impressive fashion, coming back from 17 points down and getting a 27-24 win in overtime. And Andy Dalton, more and more, looking like a possible NFL MVP candidate. Giovanni Bernard as well. Jeremy Hill, everybody thought. And then after week 1 and stuff, Hill was, the guy on top of everybody's fantasy draft board.
Absolutely.
Jeremy Hill possibly could lead the league in rushing this year. But Giovanni Bernard has stepped up and has become that team's number 1 running back again. He's hitting the hole, great, not like he did last year, shimmy in before he even got to the hole. He's hitting the hole hard. And that Cincinnati offensive line looks great. And that defensive line, Russell Wilson was under pressure this entire game. Carlos Dunlap right up there. in the league leaders in sacks. So this Cincinnati team is really for real. And I've heard people say it all week long, and I truly believe it. Other than Rob Gronkowski, I think Tyler Eifert has stepped up and is the second best tight end in the NFL. He's surpassed the Jimmy Grahams of the world, and he's right there. Tyler Eifert is a star, and when you pair him with A.J. Green, with a Mohamed Sanu, and then you've got Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill, this offense has so many weapons, and if Andy Dalton continues to play the way that he's playing, this team is going to go far.
Trey, I'm into you with some stats here real quick. The Bengals were facing a 17-point deficit, like you said, in the fourth quarter. And the team was suffering and couldn't make a move on the Seattle Seahawks. I watched a little bit of the game, going back and forth between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals game, and they were hungry, Trey. They just looked strong. Andy Dalton threw the ball 44 times, completed 30. That's staggering numbers. He only, if you're throwing that much, you're expecting to be in the 20s, 25s. He completed 30 out of his 44.
Yep.
He threw a second interception in his whole entire season. They're strong. That team is really strong. Now, I feel bad for the fantasy people that drafted Hill. I mean, I would have told you that he was a solid pick. But we forgot about Bernard. Giva Bernard has been there a year before, and he's been doing great. And honestly, I think he's more of the favorite. He got more carries than Jordan Hill, and he got more yards, of course. And he just looks stellar the whole entire. And he looks like he's good part in the passing game too, as well. He's a versatile running back. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. Tyler Eifert is the Greg Olsen of old, if you get what I'm saying. He has surpassed. I mean, coming off an injury season and just coming out stellar. I had my fantasy trade, and he pretty much saved me from losing. It was a bad week for me.
Yeah,
but he pretty much saved me from losing in my fantasy as well, with 2 touchdowns, 90 yards, 8 interceptions, and he's consistent. The only consistent game he hasn't had was against the Baltimore Ravens, but he's been consistent. When they shut down A.J. Green, I mean, you could say 6 touches to 7-8 yards is shutting A.J. Green down, but they find other weapons in Matt Sanu, Jones, Bernard, like I said, they just have weapons all over. And we're talking about a team, even though I did not pick Seattle Seahawks to go into the playoffs this year. It looks like I'm correct with a 2-3 record right now. But we're talking about a team that's solid everywhere. I mean, they had a fumble recovery return for a touchdown. They're a solid team. And you're absolutely right, Trey. You said this is the team that Cincinnati Bengals were begging for, to say, hey, we're here. We're for real. Look at us.
Yeah, Seattle really has become a litmus test in the NFL on if a team is for real and how they're going to fare during the season. Let's talk about Seattle for a second. 2-3. You picked them to miss the playoffs at the beginning of the season. I still think that they are a playoff team. I think because of the convoluted mess that is the NFC, especially competing for that last wild card spot right now. Seattle is just a half game behind Minnesota. Minnesota at 2-2 would hold the final wild card spot in the NFC right now. A lot of people were worried about Marshawn Lynch's injuries, but Thomas Rawls stepped up and had a huge game. Cam Chancellor he had a lot of tackles, but did not have the greatest game as far as secondary goes, especially when it came to covering Tyler Eifert. But I think that's going to be a thing. He looked great against Chicago, of course, but I think and even against Detroit, but as he gets more acclimated back to playing football, I think we're going to see better things from Cam Chancellor. And we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show, but they are going to be a litmus test for another undefeated team this weekend when Cam Newton and Carolina comes into Seattle. Seattle played a great game. They gave up that lead late, but Seattle was in control of this game for the majority of the game. So I don't think that you're not hearing many people out there writing Seattle off after this game. I think this is more of a sign of what's to come for Cincinnati, of Cincinnati taking that next step versus Seattle really taking a step down. 2-3, they've played a tough schedule. Their losses are to, in week 1, a very tough defense and a big emotional week 1 game against St. Louis. They lost at Lambeau Field to the Packers, and then at Cincinnati to the Bengals. So the 2 teams that they beat also are Chicago and Detroit. So you can take that where it is. I think this weekend, Seattle and Carolina, I think that's where we're going to learn a lot about this Seattle team and if they are going to make the playoffs this year.
Well, Trey, the reason why I picked them and everybody got on me like, said, Cliff, you're crazy. Why I said they were not going to make the playoffs this year because of the schedule they played. And you just mentioned the two teams they beat are teams that are nowhere near contending and looking to next season. So the teams they played so far have been tough teams. And yes, they have battled to the end. The Rams will always play Seattle tough. That's just at the whole division. And let's just look at that division, Trey. That division is a tough division to be in. And the road down the line doesn't look too far. It doesn't look like they're a team that they can win. They have to play the whole AFC North. So they have to see the Steelers. And, Baltimore Ravens and Browns, you can look at this as far as, okay, those are ones you can check off. But they play Baltimore at home. Baltimore plays good at home. If they just lost to Cleveland, Baltimore does play good at home for the most part. So these teams they're playing aren't easy wins per se. And in the division, that's not a really easy division to win, especially with teams like the Rams and Arizona stepping up. So, San Francisco may deplete it, but they always still play them good. So I'm looking at them, and one thing I've noticed, I think the defenses, I don't know if it's just Russell Wilson himself, or maybe the defenses of every team has gotten better. Say if we stop Marshawn Lynch, force another ball. Now they have a good wide receivers in Bolden and Curse, and they have Graham. They don't know how to use Graham. Graham is not a blocking. There was one play when Graham doesn't feel like he has to block anymore. It was really bad. He just pretty much blocked the guy and let go. And then they pretty much got a sack of that. Graham is not a blocking tight end. Bolden can't get open, and Kurtz can't get open. They're great hands, Trey, but they can't get open. And then when you do that, you put the pressure on Russell Wilson. It's shown that he can't handle the pressure so far, Trey. It seems like these teams have really narrowed down and say, let's stop Marshawn Lynch, and let's make Wilson throw the ball. And Wilson's a great quarterback. It just seems that now they got the card, Trey, to me.
Well, I think Russell Wilson has, been great this season, in my opinion. I think that offensive line has been absolutely horrible. Russell Wilson has felt more pressure on him, and as far as percentage of his dropbacks go, he's right there in the top 5 of the league as being pressured. And if you have another quarterback out there that can't get around that pressure like Russell Wilson has, you could see a lot worse record right now than you do for the Seattle Seahawks. Okay. The Jimmy Graham thing, that's puzzling. Darrell Bevell, that's a guy that a lot of people 2 seasons ago were talking about as a head coaching candidate. The thing with the play at the end of last season, the Marshawn Lynch Super Bowl play, that never happened. A lot of people question him there. And then now not being able to incorporate a great talent like Jimmy Graham into this offense, I think Darrell Bevell is really, taking a step back. And I think instead of possibly, leaving Seattle to get a head coaching job after this season, if what you think is going to happen in Seattle does miss the playoffs, I think Darrell Bevell is going to be the guy on the outside looking in, and we could see a new offensive coordinator in Seattle next year. But that was a very interesting game. And then another very interesting game as well, the St. Louis Rams and that defense headed to Green Bay to play the Packers, and the Packers ended up getting the win like both of us predicted, but not really in the way that we thought that they would. I talked about it last week, said that Aaron Rodgers hasn't thrown an interception at Lambeau Field since the Civil War. Throws 2 in this game.
Yeah.
St. Louis's defense was stellar, only allowing 24 points to Aaron Rodgers and the guys at home. Aaron Rodgers was also the leading rusher on the Packers. Eddie Lacy did absolutely nothing in this game. St. Louis's defense is really going to have to start looking at that offense and say, come on, step up, guys.
Right, exactly.
Todd Gurley with a great game, but Nick Foles, 4 interceptions. That's something that you got to look at in the future. Nick Foles, I think he's a better quarterback than Sam Bradford. I think they made the right move there, but Foles is going to have to get better and improve better in these situations. He's kind of a hit or miss guy. He's a very streaky guy. That season when he took over for Mike Vick in Philadelphia, had that great year. I think something like 26 touchdowns to 2-4 interceptions, something like that.
Something
a great
like that.
touchdown to interception ratio. But Foles did not have a good game this week. And honestly, he's probably the reason why St. Louis did not win this game. Todd Gurley over 150 yards rushing again. That defense picking off Aaron Rodgers 2 times that you never see in Lambeau Field. St. Louis, I still think they're a very good team. Nick Foles is just going to have to play a little bit better. But I was still very, very, very impressed with St. Louis's defense against Green Bay. But, at the same time, are we going to have to start looking at Green Bay as a really good defense? When you think of Green Bay, you think of Aaron Rodgers. But this defense has performed extremely well this season.
Trey, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I watched that game a little bit as well. It seemed like that they were all over Foles. Now, you didn't say Foles threw interceptions, but pretty much all his interceptions, he was on the run. Yep. There was one play when I think Clay Matthews was coming on the side, and Foles was trying to get away, and he was getting tackled, and he threw an interception for a touchdown. And you're absolutely right. This Green Bay defense shut down the Rams second half. They did not score a touchdown second half. So, yes, the Rams played a wonderful game. Honestly, we're actually talking about a Todd Gurley being one of those Odell Beckham Jr. kind of type players, coming off a severe injury in college and performing well. And maybe we look back as maybe we need to hold back our rookies before we actually put them in to perform. So this game, you can't really blame the Rams. It's just played the really good Green Bay Packers. That's why they're 5-0, Trey. That's why they continue to win, because they're a playoff team. Now, the Rams are a good team, but are they really playoff teams? That's what goes through my mind. The Rams do have a tough thing. Like I said, once again, they play in a tough – I'm sorry to repeat myself here. They play in a tough division, but the Rams are not a bad team. It's just Green Bay is just a better team, Trey. They're just a better team performer all the way around. Aaron Rodgers looked great. There was a pass where he just flicked it to Jones. He just flicked the ball to Jones on the run, and Jones takes care of the rest of us for a touchdown. He just finds a way to get open. He's a very good player, and I'm not afraid to say he's MVP already.
Yeah, he's looked great. That defense, number 7 in yards allowed, total defense so far for Green Bay, something that you're not accustomed to seeing. Probably the best that defense has looked since the Super Bowl season, and then the season after where they went 15-1, lost to the Giants in the playoffs. But they were very impressed. St. Louis's defense was very impressive last week. But now we're going to talk about what was the most impressive and the least impressive thing that we saw last weekend. And I'm going to talk about something that you never talk about when you talk about most impressive. My most impressive player team thing that I saw in week 5 of the NFL was Jay Cutler.
Oh, the $18 million man?
I talked about Chicago being the worst team in the NFL, especially when Jimmy Clausen was at quarterback. Jay Cutler has been back for 2 games, and they've won both of those games.
Yes.
Against 2 teams that we thought were pretty good. The Raiders, they're an improving team, and a lot of people thought that beating Chicago was just going to be something, that is what the Raiders were going to do now. Jay Cutler said, nope, take a step back. We're still the Bears. We're still going to beat you. And then this week against a Kansas City team in Arrowhead Stadium, one of the toughest places to play in the NFL, Jay Cutler again leads that team back, and that touchdown at the end of the game, drops the snap, rolls out, perfect throw in the end zone. Jay Cutler pretty much single-handedly won that game. It's very disheartening to see Jamal Charles go down with an injury like that.
Again.
For Kansas City, his second torn ACL 4 years later after his first one back in 2011. Jamal Charles, one of the most underrated running backs in NFL history. Cliff, I'll give you a stat really quickly that a lot of people do not know about Jamal Charles. Out of any running back in NFL history, Jamal Charles has the highest yards per carry of any running back in NFL history. Take away your Emmitt Smiths, your Adrian Petersons, your Walter Payton. Jamal Charles, he holds the highest yard per carry average in the history of the NFL. And, playing in Kansas City, not having too much playoff success, that kind of hurts his notoriety. But Jamal Charles, a great player. But Jay Cutler, proving a lot of doubters wrong. And a lot of people thought when it came to Jay Cutler that he folds in the big moments. This one, he led the comeback, and Chicago's 2-3. And instead of talking about them competing for the number 1 draft pick, they're right there on the fringe as a possible, competing for a wild card, and they play winless Detroit this weekend. So,
Right.
Jay Cutler, Matt Forte, and the guys getting things going. 2 straight wins for the Chicago Bears. And Jay Cutler is my most impressive thing from Week 5 in the NFL. Cliff, what impressed you?
Well, before I will get into my most impressive so far, I want to talk a little bit about Jay Cutler, if I can, with Trey. Not only has he been very impressive, he shows not to falter. I don't know if you watched the game. At the beginning of the very first drive, Jay Cutler steps back and he gets sacked, fumbled for a touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I can see Bears fans saying, "Here we go again." Jay Cutler did not. I don't know what happened after the halftime, but they were down 17-3 going into the half. Jay Cutler did not look impressive. And the Chiefs were blitzing almost every play on Jay, trying to rattle him up. And it was beautiful, Trey. He threw a touchdown pass on the run, a bomb. Shows you how his arm he was when he used to be in Denver, what we saw before. Throws a bomb, lobs it up for a touchdown. And then the drop pass, picks it up, throws it for a touchdown. Beautiful pass to his running back there. It shows that he doesn't falter. He'll mess up. He'll throw for 0-6 on one drive, and then he will pick it up and show that he doesn't falter. And he's looking very impressive, Trey. Am I ready to call him, the most comeback player of the year? Not yet. We'll see how that comes. My most impressive, Trey. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're talking about comeback player of the year. I think there's a guy in Tampa Bay that wears number 22 that you're going to have to talk about as comeback player of the year.
Here we go. Doug Martin has a couple games, and we're already giving him comeback. Let's relax ourselves. Quarterback will always be more important.
He's third in the league in rushing.
There hasn't been a lot of rushing this year, Trey. This is a horrible year for running backs. This is a harder year for running backs. Just saying, slow your roll there. Quarterback's the most important. My most impressive team, actually, for me, has surprised me. Even though I did have them winning the division, they just have been winning last-minute games, Trey. They look so good. They look poised, and they're actually looking at to go 6-0 this week when they play the St. Louis. Sorry, excuse me,
New Orleans
Saints. That's Atlanta Falcons. Redskins had this game, Trey. They had this game. They had Atlanta. Yeah, they should have won. They had them on the run. And the same player that faulted a play for the Redskins scored a touchdown, he gets a talk down to his coach, a stern talk down, says you need to play better, you need to do better, catches the game interception for a touchdown. Trey, this team is, I don't know if they're really good with the Julio Jones, of course, and the Roddy Whites and the Matt Ryans, and they have 2 stellar running backs, with Freeman and Coleman, who still plays good once he comes back from injury. They're good. They're versatile in the defense. They just play really good. Or, Trey, is it the coaching? The coaching of this team looks so much different. This shows you that move that they would fire, I forgot his name. Trey, I don't know his name. Max Smith. They fired him, bring in this new guy, and nothing really changed. The regime's still the same, but the scheme may be a little bit different. Like the Falcons are playing stellar ball, Trey. And I don't know if it's just that the players are playing better because they're the same players. Julio Jones is who he's always been. Matt Ryan, who he's always been. Or is it the coaching, Trey? This new team. What do you think?
Dan Quinn coming in there, giving that team, a burst of life that they didn't really have under Mike Smith. And then as well, Dirk Cutter, a great offensive coordinator. Now he's down here in Tampa Bay, but bringing in Kyle Shanahan, who is now the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. Very impressive there. And the emergence of Devontae Freeman, after that ridiculous call for his catch for Devontae Freeman's catch, which would have been the game winner right there, getting called back because of the stupid NFL rules again. He says, you know what? Never mind. You're not going to talk about this as a controversy because I'm going to run it in the next play and win that game. And then the defense steps up in overtime, pick 6 to win the game. Atlanta really right there with Green Bay as the best team in the NFC right now. Devontae Freeman, 405 yards rushing so far and 8 touchdowns, by far leads the league in rushing touchdowns. So Atlanta, this weekend they play, or actually Thursday night they play New Orleans. So we're not going to learn too much about them this week. Really weird. Atlanta and Carolina, the two top teams in that division right now. They don't play each other until week 14, and then they play again in week 16. So really weird scheduling right there from the NFL that they play each other twice in 3 weeks and not until week 14 of the season. So if both of those teams are still really good, then that's going to be 2 weeks of great football that could decide the division in December. So we'll see what happens there. Atlanta's still very impressive, but now we're going to get a little bit negative. Cliff, I'll let you talk first about what was the least impressive thing you saw. And I know it's a team that you had very high hopes for going into the season.
And this is the no-brainer, Trey. They just look really bad. I don't get it if they lost a lot of players, Trey.
We're talking about San Francisco,
Yeah, San Francisco, they lost a lot of players. A lot of people retired. New coaching in there. Everything's brand new. So I get it. I really do understand the struggle. But this team had good hopes going into with a great pickup with Torrey Smith. New coaching, maybe a new feel, maybe. And Kaepernick coming off one of his healthiest seasons. He said at the beginning of the season he's the healthiest felt-off year. His arm is strong. There's pictures of him throwing deep balls from the 20-yard line to Torrey Smith. I mean, it really shows that practice doesn't really matter. You're playing a team that knows everything, so you're playing it light. They have looked horrible. And the game they should have won, they lose. Now, granted, that was one heck of a drive, Trey. The Giants were hungry for that game. And you said it yourself, Eli Manning showed to be poised in the fourth quarter. I've never met a quarterback who's so more clutch than Eli in the fourth, and I will say that. There was a lot of picks, but this season he hasn't really thrown a lot of picks this season. I know you probably have a stat in there somewhere. But he has not thrown a lot of picks this season. He looks more calm. He has his weapons back. Once hopefully Victor Cruz gets better. You're looking at a tough team to play, and you said it, and I apologize for doubting you there. Still don't have a running game, which is kind of suspect. But anyway, Kaepernick actually played a good game, and they end up losing this game. I don't understand the play call on the 2-yard. They run the ball with 1:45 left. I know they're trying to be conservative, but you're giving way too much time for Eli Manning to get the ball back. It just doesn't. I just don't get it. San Francisco has not looked good, Trey.
Exactly. And you want to talk about stats. And if you want to add up the ranks between the offense and defense and talk about what the worst team in the NFL possibly could be, San Francisco has the number 29th ranked offense in the NFL and the 31st ranked defense in the NFL. So you're not going to get much worse than that when you're talking about teams right there. Kaepernick had a better game this week. The team overall looked better this week against the Giants team that is getting hot. But we've talked about the NFC West multiple times already in this podcast, and San Francisco is definitely the worst team in that division. It still boggles my mind. I have no idea what happened in San Francisco on Monday night against Minnesota to start the season.
Yeah.
Where did that team and defense go? Where did that Carlos Hyde go? So we'll see what happens in the future when it comes to this team, if Jim Tom Sula is really the future, if Colin Kaepernick is still the future, and if they're going to continue to be able to find young talent on that defense to, like the Navarro Bowmans of the world, to keep them afloat and possibly improve next year, or if they are just on the decline and are going to have to look at rebuilding.
And Anquan Bolden was pissed. And we were talking about it in the beginning of the show about trades. That's kind of a lukewarm kind of a situation there, Trey. We'll get more into that show, but Anquan Bolden was very upset. Very upset. And he caught the ball for 107 yards, but he was still upset. But we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, he has every right to be. But now I'm going to talk about what was the least impressive thing that I saw in Week 5. And it's something that Anquan Bolden knows a lot about, his former team, and a team that you know a lot about, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. I tweeted a lot towards the end of the 1 o'clock games last weekend. Tweeted a lot about the Bucs and Jacksonville. I tweeted about Cincinnati. I even tweeted about at the start of the game about the fabulous Arizona Cardinals. I like to rank my tweets, how good. I like to rank myself, see how good I do. And my favorite tweet that I made this past weekend, follow me at TDEXPN, and I quote, The Baltimore Ravens are not a good football team. No matter which way you look at it, they're just bad. They're 1-4. And honestly, they should be, you can talk about they should have won the first couple weeks of the season, but they could very easily be 0-5 if Josh Scobie makes a field goal. This team, and I'll tell you right now, I say it every week when we make picks, when we're talking about the Cleveland Browns game. I will never pick the Cleveland Browns as long as Josh McCown is their starting quarterback. This past Sunday, the Baltimore Ravens made Josh McCown look like Peyton Manning of 5 years ago. Ridiculous stats. And when you look at the receivers on Cleveland, there isn't anyone. Travis Benjamin is fast, yes, but that's about all you got. You got Gary Barnidge making the super thigh master catch in the end zone. He's going to be on the cover of Madden next year, in my opinion. Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson, he's a promising rookie. I think he's going to be a good player in the future, but, just not good things. Justin Forsett had a decent game this past week. Not even decent. He had a very good game against the Cleveland defense, but it's at home as well in Baltimore. Yeah. And you lose in overtime to Cleveland, and you're down at the bottom of that division.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh gets a big win on Monday night. You got all these other teams in the AFC, like Buffalo, competing for a playoff spot, like San Diego, like the Raiders. You want to look in the South, you can even talk about even Tennessee as possibly getting back up there, losing a close one to Buffalo. The Jets as well, competing for all of these wild card spots. And Baltimore's 1-4. And, Cliff, I know you might disagree with me on the fact that the season's over, but I told you might want to start watching some more college football, and I truly believe that. I don't necessarily think that this team is going to have a number one draft pick, Detroit, Chicago. Some of those teams are worse than Baltimore, but they're not making the playoffs. To make the playoffs at this point, they're really going to have to go 9-2 probably the rest of the season to make the playoffs. Right. And from what I've seen from this team so far this season, I don't see that happening. And I saw the worst of them this past Sunday. You thought they'd improve after that big win against Pittsburgh and then getting a long week to prepare for Cleveland. Right. And then you put on that performance against Josh McCown of all people. I'm really not trying to bash the Ravens. If this was any other team, if this was the Bucks playing Cleveland, if this was the Patriots playing Cleveland, and they go out there, yes, it was a close game, but when your defense, you're supposed to be known for that defense. I know your feelings on Dean Pease up there in that defense, but overall, this team is just not that good. There's nothing that this team really does that scares me, that I think that going into the week is really going to scare me, that I'm really going to have to game plan for. Justin Forsett has been good, but I don't think that, teams are going to, game plan to stop him. There's no – Steve Smith was out this past week, but I don't think you're really game planning to stop Steve Smith either. This offense, this defense, I can't really see Baltimore, scaring teams and making a huge comeback to make the playoffs. And a lot of people picked them to go to the Super Bowl this year. Peter King of Sports Illustrated, one of the most respected guys when it comes to Super Bowl picks. His Super Bowl picks always seem to turn out very well. Picked Baltimore to play Green Bay in the Super Bowl, the same pick that you made actually. But, I don't think Baltimore's getting there. I think that they're going to have a top 10, maybe 10 to 12 pick in the draft this next season, something that Baltimore hasn't seen in a while, something that definitely John Harbaugh hasn't seen since he's been there, something that Joe Flacco hasn't seen since he's been there. Right. So, this is the season that Baltimore finally takes a step down. Least impressive, Josh McCown. I'll just say that again. Josh McCown.
Here's the thing, Trey, and you pretty much took a lot of the words out of my mouth. The Ravens do not look good. I don't feel comfortable saying we anymore. As a broadcaster, I have to detach myself, and I have full comfortable, ability of detaching myself from the Baltimore Ravens right now. I will always be a fan through and through. That is the team I will always cheer for. However, they looked very bad. After the win against Pittsburgh, we expected big things from the Baltimore Ravens. We thought that me and you both was like, okay, this team looks like they took a step ahead. Yes, Josh Scobie missed a couple kicks, but the team looked very impressive. This team is injured. That's not an excuse, though. This team puts up 30 points. A lot of Ravens put up points. They just can't finish the game. They have blown 5 fourth-quarter leads, Trey. And I say 5 is because they were leading against the Steelers, and they've blown that too. 5 fourth-quarter leads. There's definitely going to be a change. If we're talking about anything the first time to go, John Harbaugh wants to say, oh, we're not talking about players. We don't cut them. But we cut a great offensive coordinator in the middle of the season to win for a Super Bowl. Dean Pease is definitely on the hottest seat of all. Now, we could talk about the, 4 players in IR, no pass rush, nobody to throw to. The Ravens still had that game. They still had it. And it's like you said, Trey, we're playing at home against the Browns. I don't know how I feel about the San Francisco game. So they are not a good team right now, Trey. They are not a good team right now, Trey. You said it right there on the head. There's no way the Ravens should have lost this game. It's a sad day. Like I said, it's not even cold here, and it's a sad day in Baltimore. It's something that the Ravens aren't used to, and they're going to have to bring out the funk. They're going to have to bring out the funk. The middle linebackers played a horrendous game. There's no way that Duke Johnson should get a 27-yard run. You got the tight end who's slow forever, who had an amazing game. 139 yards, I believe. It was really bad.
Watch Gary Barnidge on the cover of Madden next year.
he had the Terrell Suggs catch. Guess we played the Steelers in between his legs. It's just looking really bad. The team is suffering from a lot of injuries, yes, but there's no excuse for this loss. There's no excuse whatsoever.
No, they're not, and that's a team that really has failed to live up to expectations. And now, what we're going to get into now is going to also deal with a lot of teams that haven't, teams and players that haven't lived up to expectations. And we're going to go through. We're getting close. Before, in years past, the trade deadline in the NFL was week 6. Now they've moved it back a couple of weeks to week 8. So we're going to talk about some players that could be moved at the trade deadline, whether that team should move them, and what could be an ideal situation for this player to move to. And first, we're going to talk about a guy and a team that has already moved some pieces. The Chicago Bears, they've already moved Jared Allen and John Bostic. Allen going to Carolina, Bostic going to New England. But the most marquee player on the Chicago Bears roster, and a player that teams had, I know for a fact, even Tampa Bay possibly could have been interested in him before the resurgence of Doug Martin, and that's Matt Forte. He leads the league in rushing right now, and you never really think about a guy who's leading the league in rushing, possibly even halfway into the season, as being moved. But the Chicago Bears really need to rebuild. They've won back-to-back games, yes, but this is a team that I think needs to build for the future, and possibly getting Matt Forte out of there. And this could be the perfect time to move him when he's leading the league in rushing. You could get a lot back for this guy.
Yes.
I think a lot is going to be told this Sunday, whether they win against Detroit or not, and improve to 3-3, and really can talk about competing for a playoff spot. But Cliff, do you think that the Bears should move Matt Forte? And do you see any team that sticks out to you as a possible good landing spot for the veteran running back?
There's a lot of good landing spots for Matt Forte. However, I believe that if Chicago Bears believe in Jay Cutler and want to get more of these wins, and like you said, they could be going 3-3 this week, it'd be the worst time to trade Matt Forte. If they believe that this is their season to actually compete this season, keep Forte. But if they want to build in the future, go ahead and trade him. Go ahead and trade him and get a good value second and third round pick for him. Like the teams, as far as it's kind of hard for me to New Orleans needs something there. They need something there to pick them up. Like you said yourself, Tampa Bay, even though Doug Martin has daddy look impressive, they need a running back. You can talk about Tennessee with Bishop Sankey. Did you kind of fold your cards up with that? There's a lot of teams that would push for that, but none of these teams I've named are contenders right now.
I'll give you a good one. I'll give you a good one for Matt Forte and a team that's running a game has really been struggling, and that's the Denver Broncos. I think with Peyton Manning there and those guys there, That offensive line hasn't performed that great this year, but Chicago's offensive line isn't that good as well. I think Matt Forte would be a great fit in Denver. And if I'm John Elway, I'm calling Chicago and, talking to, my old coach and John Fox about possibly trying to bring Forte to Denver to improve the struggling offense of the Denver Broncos. That's my pick right there for Forte. If he moves, I don't think he's going to move simply because of the improvement that we've seen in Chicago in the past couple of weeks of the season. So I don't think that they're going to move Forte. If they lose to Detroit on Sunday, which I think is a possibility, I think that Forte could be moved, but we'll see what happens there. Now we're going to move to the defensive side of the ball and talk about a guy who was brought in last offseason as a big free agent acquisition, but now has been on the bench and is only playing in nickel situations, and that's Alteron Werner down here in Tampa Bay. There's no reason, in my opinion, I think he should still be playing over Mike Jenkins and even Tim Jennings in the secondary. Jonathan Banks is hurt right now. Played a solid game in the nickel last week, but Werner, a big contract. I think that he could possibly be moved even to a team like the Patriots, who really could use some secondary help, or even Indianapolis, who could use some secondary help as well. I think those could be possible landing spots for Alteron Werner. And I hate to say it, and we're going to talk about a lot of players on this list, but I think Werner is probably the most likely guy of the guys that we're going to talk about as far as getting moved.
You know what, Trey? I said it, I don't know if you remember, in one of these episodes. I don't know what it is about why we pay big Tennessee players after they have one big year there, with the Albert Haynesworth and the Vernons as well. He's looking very disappointed. We talked about it in the season. However, there's a lot of teams that need him and need his play. I think you get a good solid 4th or 5th round pick for them. The team that would need him the most right now is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are struggling right now. Ozzie Newsome, the Ravens have 4 culinary picks this season, and they've turned out great for other teams. So they're looking around like the 4th and 5th rounders that he'll come up. So he has a little more wiggle room to trade his picks. I think that it'll be a great move for them. They need a established cornerback other than Jimmy Smith. We're getting burnt out there, Trey. I'm sorry, I keep saying they're my team. I love this team. They're getting burnt out there almost every single play. They need someone that is a good zone quarterback, because that's what we're playing right now, because Dean Pease plays a zone defense. Werner would be great fit in Baltimore, and he holds value. So, as we get closer, we'll see how the Ravens decline. The Ravens are about building for the future as well. They will make this trade and build for a later tomorrow. But Werner will be a great addition for the Baltimore Ravens, and it's something I actually do see happening.
Yeah, I definitely could see Werner moving. Baltimore, Indy, and New England, all possible landing spots for the veteran corner from Tampa Bay. Now we're going to talk about a guy that we talked about earlier in the show, someone who's not happy with his current situation, somebody who wants to go somewhere where he's going to win a Super Bowl as he gets to the later stage of his career, and that's Anquan Boldin. Things are not going great in San Francisco, and I think they almost owe it to this guy to move him to a contender. And I talked about them when I talked about Alteron Werner. I think the Patriots might be the landing spot for Anquan Boldin. Go ahead. I just think
Trey.
The Patriots always seem to pull these guys and give them nothing to get them as well.
I was looking at this as we were talking, and Boldin wants to go on a winning team. He's a little upset with the Ravens, so I'm sorry, Ravens fans, there's no way that's happening. We traded for a 6th round pick. It would take him a higher pick for him to get him back to the Baltimore Ravens, so that's not happening. But nail right in the head, Trey. The Patriots will be an awesome move. He wants to go to a team he can contend for. Tom Brady can put the ball right there for them. He's a possession wide receiver who catches almost everything thrown his way. The Patriots don't need draft picks right now. They're stellar. They find players like the Deion Lewis's of the great. So Boldin will be an awesome pick, and I hope they make that move. I hope just for Boldin, because he's a stellar player. He deserves to win another championship. I've always said it since he was a Cardinal. He's just a hard grit wide receiver. No matter how old he is, Boldin deserves a chance to compete. Baltimore fans, that's not happening. I'm sorry. We're not competing for anything this year, too much this year. So I think Patriots pull this trigger.
You know what would be also a very interesting spot for him would be
What's that?
going back to the team that he started his career with, and the Arizona
Oh,
Cardinals repair with Larry Fitzgerald, Malcolm Floyd. There, they look very good, but already in the receiving core. But I think that that's a possibility right there. And I think two other teams that you could possibly look at are the New York Giants because of Victor Cruz's injury struggles, and even the
okay.
San Diego Chargers as well. Keenan Allen can't do everything out there. So I think Anquan Bolden would be a big fit with Phillip Rivers, who currently leads the NFL in passing. So I think that's a good fit as well. There are plenty of teams that could use a guy like Anquan Bolden.
Even with Gatesy coming back, I don't see the Chargers pulling that move, but that would be a great move for the Chargers. Gives them three solid weapons. Also, when they find out when they can do it, Melvin Gordon,
Yeah.
it'd be a great move for Phillip Rivers as well.
Yeah, now we're going to talk about the most important position in all of football, and that's quarterback, and talk about a guy who has been talked about a lot. Someone who's, I'm sure you know, living up in the Baltimore, D.C.,
DMV area.
Maryland
Yeah.
area, and that's Robert Griffin III. He's been inactive for a lot of these games as well. Colt McCoy's been the backup guy. I don't think after this season whatsoever RG3 is going to be in Washington, but I think you could trade for him in the offseason, but I think it's a good move for a team to trade for him now and get him in your system for half of a season. And the team that I think that the absolute perfect fit for RG3 is not a team that's going to compete this season because of what their record already is, and that's the Houston Texans. RG3
Wow.
is a Texas guy, and Houston's quarterback play has been atrocious.
Yeah.
And pairing him up there with DeAndre Hopkins, who is the league leader in receiving yards right now, and Arian Foster, that team with RG3 could create a lot of buzz in Houston. They're a team that went 9-7 last year, have a very solid defense right now. I think RG3 in Houston, and I think that the Houston Texans should make this move now. So they get him in there now. They improve a little bit this season, and the next season it's full on with RG3 and DeAndre Hopkins, JJ Watt as 3 stars right there in Houston. Another surprise team that I've heard a lot of people mention when it comes to RG3. I've heard people say that they expect RG3 to be in Denver next year and take the mantle
Wow.
from Peyton Manning. So that's an interesting one to look at. I don't think that Denver would make that move right now. I think that would be something that would be done in the offseason. But if RG3 is going to be traded, I think that Houston is the team that pulls the trigger on that.
Here's the thing about the Washington Redskins. They the the GMs there love RG3.
Yep.
The coaching staff and the players, however, do not. However, the GM and the owners gives all control to the coaches and make the decisions because that's how they feel works best. They learned from Marty Schottenheimer, and this is probably how we should handle the situation back in the day. So they've given all the power to those people. They love RG3. That's why he's going to sit on the bench and make $16 million this year, Trey. I would love for RG3 to get traded. I think he's the whole DMV, they would love to see RG3 exceed. However, I don't think he gets traded this year, but I think he will be with a new team. You said surprisingly, but think about it. Kubiak wants to run his offense and sees a lot of promise in what Peyton Manning has done with the pistol. RG3 would be great in the pistol formation because that's what Peyton Manning runs. The team that I think he will be great and will exceed by our expectation will be the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a read option quarterback, right? He's been with Baylor. That's why I was very shocked that the Washington Redskins, after losing their offensive coordinator, did not pick up the head coach for Baylor. I thought that
Art
was
Briles, yeah.
I thought it was a perfect marriage. I thought that was going to be the move that excel RG3. I can see that they're trying to make RG3 into a pocket passer. He's not that, Trey. And one person who does not mind making RG3 run around almost every play would be the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Chip Kelly misses his Mariota, and he sees a great Mariota in RG3 with a rocket arm, and he was very accurate in Baylor. The reason why he won the Heisman. He's a read option quarterback. He would be a perfect marriage. You see what they did with Tim Tebow.
Yep.
Yes, it's preseason, but he looked very impressed with Tim Tebow. They need a read option quarterback, and sadly, Sam Bradford is not that player. He ran a read option in Oklahoma, but he's not a read option quarterback in the NFL. RG3 will be perfect there. I don't see Eagles making that move because they're going to ask for a second or first round pick. Even how bad he's done, they traded way too much for RG3. They're going to ask for way too much for him. Now, if Chip Kelly feels like doing that on the ridicule he's already on, he would make that move. It'd be perfect marriage. But I don't think that happens. We're looking at an offseason move for RG3.
Yeah, I think so as well. I still think Houston is just the absolute perfect fit for RG3, even though I possibly could see if Houston ends up with, a top 5 pick, which it looks like they might be, Bill O'Brien going after Christian Hackenberg from Penn State, his former team, a guy who's going to be drafted near the top of the draft right there. And one last guy that I know you brought up to me as a guy who's also very unhappy in his current situation, but on a very good football team. So
right.
Cliff, I'll let you lead it off with what we think's going on with Roddy White in Atlanta.
Right, yeah, he's voiced it. He is very upset. He's literally voiced it. Throw me the ball. Let me make plays. I am open. And he's absolutely right. When you have teams with double teaming, Julio Jones, and someone's triple teaming him, still catching the ball right away, it's open. He's poised to make. But the plays drawn up has not been going to him. And Matt Ryan is not going to throw you the ball unless you're open, unless he feels like you can make the catch. And he proved it, making that clutch third down play after Matt Ryan had a horrible game to show them that throw me the ball. Now, there's speculation and talk that there's a lot of teams talking. There's apparently 4 teams talking to the Atlanta Falcons for this trade, but they've all said that it's not true. There's no way we're moving him. He's our player. He's like, yeah, he will be a perfect fit for a lot of teams, Trey. One particular team I know who builds on making these solid trades for them tomorrow is the Baltimore Ravens. They need a wide receiver threat. The number 1 wide receiver goes down for injury, almost out for the rest of the season. Dennis Pitta is on, who knows? Your tight ends are hurt. Stevie Smith is hurt. We don't know if he's going to be returning for San Francisco game. They need a weapon. Roddy Wright would be a perfect weapon that Joe Flacco has honestly never really had besides the Anquan Bowl in Baltimore. So this move, being that they have a lot of picks to throw away because of a compensatory pick, this would be a perfect move for the Baltimore Ravens. However, I think Atlanta's going to want someone around a 3rd to 2nd round pick for a great Roddy Wright, even though he's kind of up there in age. So we'll see. But there's a bunch of talking, but Atlanta said they shut it down and said he's not moving him, but we all know how that goes, Trey.
Yeah, I don't think Atlanta should move him because Julio Jones, yes, he's great, but I think a lot of teams have to account for Roddy White still. He's getting up there in age, but you still have to account for Roddy White, and Julio Jones just can't do absolutely everything. It seems like he can, but when you lose that other option in Roddy White, I think that this is the wrong time to make that move. 2 teams that I think could be very interested in, one particularly, and that's the Minnesota Vikings. They have Mike Wallace right now, but getting a guy like Roddy White in there would be great for Teddy Bridgewater. And then another team as well is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think to pair him with Antonio Brown would be a really great 1-2 punch. And we've seen that those secondary receivers, other than Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Darius Hayward-Bay, they're really not number 2 receivers. And I think Roddy White and Antonio Brown, even though I'm not necessarily sure that Roddy White would like to go there, I think he wants to go to a team where he's going to be the number 1 target, which I think he would be in Minnesota. And he's not going to be that in Pittsburgh. I think that the best place for Roddy White is where he is right now.
Okay.
The season's going to have ebbs and flows, and when you have Devontae Freeman running the ball as good as he is right now, and Julio Jones playing as good as he is right now, I think Roddy White just needs to take a step back and look back at last season and see how bad last season was and how you missed the playoffs. And this year you've won 5 games already and you're on the verge of already winning more games than you did last year. I think that's what Roddy White needs to do and focus on winning a Super Bowl and doing what he can for the Atlanta Falcons because they're a contender. No matter what anybody says, and they're still not getting the coverage they deserve, in my opinion. I think Atlanta is better they've proved to me in the past couple weeks, even though Green Bay's defense has looked really good, but with the emergence of Devontae Freeman, I think Atlanta's the best team in the NFC. And
Okay. Wow.
even better than the fabulous Arizona Cardinals right now. I think that's I think that's a very tough game right there. I think what's really going to matter, especially when it comes to Green Bay, and when you're talking about Atlanta and Arizona competing with Green Bay in the playoffs, I think one of those teams is going to have to finish with a better record than Green Bay and get home field advantage, because you're not going to go into Lambeau and beat the Packers. No. So that's going to be very important. And I think Roddy White is going to be a big part of what Atlanta does coming up in the next couple of weeks and for the season. Honestly, we're recording this on Thursday morning. I expect a big game from Roddy White tonight in New Orleans.
Yes.
And I think that's going to change a lot. I think Roddy White stays in Atlanta. And now we're going to get on to our picking portion of the week. And Cliff, I'm going to go to you first. A lot of controversy in the fantasy world with everything that's going on with DraftKings and FanDuel right now. But we're going to talk about a strictly, playing in your ESPN, your Yahoo, your NFL.com's traditional fantasy leagues. Cliff, when you're looking at the waiver wire this week, who should you pick up? A late pickup on Thursday. And I know you've got a guy that isn't on a lot of rosters. I could probably, even though you already claimed him, I know. I could in our league, I could probably go on my fantasy football app right now and claim him if you wouldn't have already did, because I don't think very many people have looked at this guy.
You know what, Trey? You don't have to wait for the waivers, too. You can just pick him up and claim him. He's on your team. And that's Ahmad Bradshaw. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Just think about this here. The Colts have been struggling because they haven't really found a running game yet with Frank Gore. Frank Gore is the only running back they have. Without Frank Gore, they have no second player to run the ball. And that's what caused them their struggles and their woes with Luck, because Luck is feel the pressure to throw the ball. Listen to me now and think about it. Pick this guy up because he's going to be in the system getting the ball half of the carries, and he's a great running back still. We don't know what he's done because he hasn't played all season. He hasn't been on the team all season, but he said he feels healthy. He's been training all year, waiting for someone to pick up the call. He said he had a call from the Giants that he thought it was coming sooner, but it never came through. That's why he's back with the Colts. He knows the system, Trey. We're talking about fantasy here. He will be a very, very good fantasy pickup when Frank Gore can't go. Ladies and gentlemen, I picked up in both of my leagues. He's sitting there waiting to be waived by your claims. Pick him up before someone else comes in right now. Trey, now, again, you are almost spot on with these picks. I have money in my pocket. You lost me some, but I still have money in my pocket ready to go. Trey, who is your betting pick of the week? Who do you have this week?
This week, another interesting week as far as betting lines go, but the one to go with, without a doubt, is Minnesota at home against Kansas City. Minnesota favored by 4 points at home. I think they beat Kansas City by more than that. Kansas City losing Jamal Charles. Niall Davis is going to be the lead running back there in Kansas City right now. And Alex Smith is going to be forced to throw the ball a lot more. And Minnesota's front four has been ridiculous. They've been great in the first couple of weeks of the season, getting pressure on quarterbacks like Denver. Minnesota's front four has looked absolutely stellar. 4 points at home. I think Minnesota beats Kansas City by 10 points. So you're safe on the cover there. I think Minnesota easily beats the Chiefs at home this week. And now, before we get into picking all of the games this week, we're going to tell you, if you only have time, if you're only able to watch one game this Thursday, Sunday, or Monday, what game should you set aside that 3.5 hour block of time to watch? Cliff, I'll let you go first.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my game is a little bit late because we're playing on the West Coast. So here on the East Coast, get all your chores done. Make sure you go to church. Do what your regular schedule do, because you got a game at 4 o'clock to watch, and that is the Carolina Panthers going into Seattle to play the 12th man and the Seattle Seahawks. Trey, this is an amazing game. Seahawks coming off of a game they possibly could have won. They could have won if they would have kept them held down. And Carolina coming off the bye and undefeated, Trey. Undefeated and looking great. Cam Newton is a wonderful player to watch. If you are not intriguing to watching the 4 o'clock game of the Baltimore Ravens in San Francisco, go ahead and click this one on, Trey, because this one looks like it's going to be a fight to the end. 12th man is a hard place to play in Seattle. They're actually on the team as the team is playing. It's a really loud place to be. I got that being a real exciting gunslinger game. Carolina's defense does not look all too great. I really think that Seahawks and Carolina is the game of the week, Trey. Who do you have, actually, Trey? You know what? I'm so excited about that game, actually. I kind of just breezed over who you thought. Like, who do you have watching this week?
Well, the game that I'm picking for you this week, you're going to have even more time to get everything done. You're going to have time to go to church, get your entire honey-do list that your girl has for you to do over the weekend. You're going to have all of Sunday to do that before you're going to even be able to sit down and have dinner with the family, get everything all settled up, get ready to go to work on Monday. But then 8:30 Sunday Night Football, NBC. I think this is the first time that either of us have picked the Sunday Night Football game as our most intriguing game of the week, and that's supposed to be the most intriguing game every week. That's supposed to be the marquee game of the week. And this week, it's the rematch, the revenge game, Deflategate Part 2, as the New England Patriots head into Indianapolis to face the Colts. A lot of people were really down on the Colts after the first 2 weeks of the season. They've rebounded 1-3 straight, and even the last two with Matt Hasselbeck at quarterback instead of Andrew Luck. So personally, I think the injury with Andrew Luck to his shoulder, I think that had a lot to do. I think that bothered him in the first couple of weeks of the season. I think that had a lot to do with his not so great performance in the first couple of weeks. He's going to come back on Sunday, and I think it's going to be a very, very great game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. Neither team's defense is that great. Ahmad Bradshaw returning to Indianapolis to pair with Frank Gore. The Patriots looked great, demolishing the Dallas Cowboys last week. So I think that this is going to be the game to watch this week. The Colts are going to be looking for revenge. They're going to be looking for validation. They're going to, be playing for their coach in Chuck Pagano. They're going to be playing to prove to everyone that picked them to do great things this season that they weren't wrong. This is going to be the game of the week, in my opinion. Storylines abound. I think the Colts are going to prove that they are a really good football team this week. I'll save my pick for the end, but I think that you're in for a very good game this week.
And a healthy Andrew Luck.
Yeah, healthy Andrew Luck as well, taking those 2 weeks off before this big one. Now we're going to get into our picks of the week. We haven't counted up. We haven't tallied up the scores as far as who's gotten the most right yet. I believe it's me. But now that we're on iTunes and all of the podcasts are in one place, I give a challenge to you listeners, one of our loyal listeners. I want you to go back and listen to our picks portion at the end of every show, and I want you to tally the scores for us. And next week, we'll give you a shout out on the podcast. Tweet us at TDEXPN or at TeddyBearCliff and tell us who has the better record so far this season. But now we're going to get into it. Start with a Thursday night game, as we always do. Atlanta and New Orleans. Both of us have already talked about this. I expect a big game from Roddy White tonight. I think Atlanta, I think they go up early, and I think they win this one big in New Orleans. Last week, New Orleans gave life to the struggling Philadelphia offense. I think Atlanta gets that same life this week for Roddy White. Roddy White, Devontae Freeman, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan all have a huge game. They beat New Orleans big. Go to 6-0.
We're unanimous on this one, Trey. They're my most impressive. And could we be talking about an end of era of Sean Payton? Maybe we'll talk about it a little later the show after this game. Sean Payton may be on his way out of New Orleans. We'll see how this game goes. I really believe Atlanta comes in, shuts down New Orleans.
Yep, I agree. Now we're going to get into an intriguing game. Two teams that have surprised a little. The 2-3 Washington Redskins head to New York to face the 3-1 New York Jets. I'm going to go with the Jets in this one. I think that both of these teams, their defense is the strength of the team. I think that the Jets coming off of a bye week and getting that big win over Miami and London, I think the Jets win this one, improved to 4-1 New York Jets. And are we going to have a quarterback controversy once Geno Smith comes back from that broken jaw? Who knows? But I think the Jets win this one, beat the Redskins.
This was actually tough for me, Trey. These teams, these one of these teams, again, we don't know who they really are. The Washington playing against a great game, a game they should have won against Atlanta, and just beating teams left and right sometimes, teams that we never thought. I'm going to pick the Jets, though, however, on this because Fitzpatrick, the marriage between Fitzpatrick and Brandon Marshall has looked stellar. Chris Ivory is a monster over there rubbing the ball. They have a lot of weapons, and this defense is very, very good. So I got the Jets winning at home.
Yep. 2 games, two same picks so far. We're agreeing a lot. I think we might agree on this one as well. The fabulous Arizona Cardinals heading to Pittsburgh. Another very intriguing game this week. Pittsburgh, if Big Ben was back, I did see that he has participated in non-contact 7-on-7 drills, but I still don't think he's going to play this Sunday against Arizona. Arizona, again, walloping a team, sending Matthew Stafford to the bench and Dan Orlovsky coming in there. Another huge game for Arizona that they've only played one close game this year. They lost that one to St. Louis. I think they're playing a tough team in Pittsburgh, but I still don't really trust Pittsburgh's defense. And I think Carson Palmer, Chris Johnson, number 2 in the league in rushing. Let me just say that again. Chris Johnson, number 2 in the league in rushing. So I think that Arizona, with Chris Johnson, getting Andre Ellington back, Larry Fitzgerald, they are able to exploit that Pittsburgh secondary. And with Michael Vick, they're still a solid team, but I don't think that they're going to be able to score with Arizona. So Arizona wins this one.
You know what? Pittsburgh with a heck of a game, coming down the last 5 minutes with a David Bell run. It just shows that this team has grit into win the game. But I agree with you. It looks like the fabulous Arizona Cardinals will come home into Pittsburgh country and actually win this one. Trey, if the Roethlisberger was suiting up, it'd be a different story. I'll be right there with you. Antonio Brown is unstoppable when the Roethlisberger on the field. They're not giving a chance to let Vic throw the ball, making minimal mistakes. They're running in the Wildcat because they just don't feel Vic can be that player. I just don't see that doing with Arizona's defense. I got Arizona winning this at Pittsburgh.
So 3 games, 3 same picks. And I think
this is crazy.
I think the same thing is going to happen right here. Kansas City at Minnesota. It was my bet of the week. Not really going to talk much more about this one. Minnesota wins.
Minnesota wins at home. Trey, I do not like how we're agreeing with this, but so far Minnesota wins at home. They're really good at home. Kansas City is coming off of a hurt. And now we get to see if Alex Smith can really step up and be that quarterback. We'll see.
Yeah. Now we're going to get into some games that are a little more intriguing that we could differ on. First, the undefeated Cincinnati Bengals head to Buffalo to play the Bills. Different stories coming out of Buffalo on if Tyrod Taylor is going to play this week. Earlier in the week, it came out that the Bills were preparing E.J. Manuel to start this Sunday. Then Tyrod said the plan is for him to play. Either way, he's not going to be at 100% with the strained MCL. And I don't think that without 100% Tyrod Taylor, they're going to be able to beat Cincinnati. Cincinnati, another undefeated team, moves to 6-0.
And this is where we differ, Trey. This is where we differ. Bengals, this is not a hater move. You played very, very well. I will give you that. This is really tough for me because, E.J. Manuel might start, actually, and I was kind of like on the fence about that. However, I believe that besides that one loss to New England at home, Buffalo plays very, very, very well at home. They're 3-2 right now. They're hungry. They played a great game. Tyrod Taylor could honestly, we can both talk about our most impressive player coming, not even starting into looking like a very solid starter, running and passing the ball, which we haven't seen in a long time with like the great Russell Wilsons. I have Tyrod Taylor starting, and I have Buffalo getting this win, Trey. I think this defense can step up and stop a Tyler Eifert and stop an A.J. Green, and it'll depend on the Cincinnati's run game. And with that front four, there's no way they're running on this team. I got Buffalo winning this one at home.
That's going to be a very interesting game. Now we're going to get into a game that we might differ on as well. The Chicago Bears coming off 2 straight wins, going to Detroit. I think Matthew Stafford is still going to start this Sunday. I'm not sure if they're still going to keep Orlovsky in there. Either way, Jay Cutler was my most impressive this week. So I think that Jay Cutler is probably due to be my least impressive player next week if we've learned anything from the past of Jay Cutler. So I think that Detroit becomes the final winless team to get their first win. I think the Lions beat the Bears and get their first win of the season.
You know what, Trey? I'm looking at this, and I've looked at some of the Detroit's losses. Besides that horrible game last week, they should have beat the Seahawks. If, Calvin Johnson and fumble. The games are very, very close. Chicago was a tough team. Trey, I'm going to agree with you on this one, actually. I think Detroit finally gets their win. They don't want to go. They don't want to have one. I think Abdullah has a very, very good game because this team cannot stop the run. Detroit wins at home. Easy win.
Now we're going to go into the Peyton Manning of now facing the Peyton Manning of 5 years ago and Josh McCown, apparently, as the Denver Broncos head to Cleveland to face the Browns. Denver's defense is not Baltimore's defense. Denver has the best defense in the league. Denver shuts down Josh McCown, and he looks like he did last year in Tampa. Denver beats Cleveland easily.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you see how much hate that my co-star has for Josh McCown? Because he's kind of a slack. However, I agree with you once again. Denver is just way too strong on defense. When Peyton Manning is not looking good at all, Denver is just way too strong for this team. They win at Cleveland.
Now we're going to go into a game that's very intriguing. Two teams that haven't looked that great so far. Houston at Jacksonville. Blake Bortles had the biggest game of his career last week in a close loss to the Buccaneers, 4 touchdown passes. Houston, I think Brian Hoyer will probably start at quarterback this week. J.J. Watt could be getting after Blake Bortles, but it's in Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's an improving team. Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson, two Allens, great receivers for Jacksonville. I think Blake Bortles gets a big win at home. Jacksonville gets their second win of the season.
Now, the Ravens may look bad, but there's no excuses why you should lose to Jacksonville. I'm sorry. There's no way. Not with the big J.J. Watts and the Clownies over there. I think the J.J. Watts in Houston, they hopefully find their quarterback. If it's going to be Mallett, if it's going to be Hoyer, but regardless who starts the quarterback, they'll win at Jacksonville. Houston.
See, we differ there. Now we're going to get into Miami at Tennessee. The Dan Campbell era has started in Miami with we'll see what happens with Tannehill there if he's still dissing practice squad players this week. Tennessee is a team that could be better than their record. The Bucs have surpassed them after that first that horrible thing that we saw in week 1. The Bucs have 2 wins. Tennessee only has 1, even though they definitely could have won. They could easily be 3-1 right now, losing a close game to Indianapolis and then a close game to Buffalo this week. I think Tennessee beats Miami at home.
Let me get close up to the mic so they can hear me. Ladies and gentlemen, Miami fans, you are the worst team in the NFL. Don't let Chicago and Detroit's record fool you. You are the worst team. You are worse. You're even worser. That's not even a word. You're worser than the Baltimore Ravens. Yes. The Baltimore Ravens. You took the words out of my mouth, Trey. You lose this game. Tennessee runs over your team. I'm not even hating. You're just that bad. Tennessee wins at home.
Now, your most intriguing game of the week, Carolina at Seattle. I think Carolina is one of the undefeated teams. I think they go down this week. Seattle, I think that they're a better team than Carolina. Carolina has played a very weak schedule. I watched them in person against Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay's defense really shut them down. Most of their points came off of turnovers, pick six, fumble returns. I don't think Carolina is as good as their record indicates. I think Seattle beats them by 2 touchdowns. Seattle wins this one handily at home.
I think we go back and look and see why I picked Seattle not to win the playoffs this game. I believe Carolina will go into the 12th man and win this game single-handedly. And actually probably, I will even say the score, Trey. The score is going to be 24-10.
Oh, wow.
I think Carolina coming off a bye with no word, Beason in the corner, shuts down Baldwin. They get panicked. They have nowhere to throw the ball to. I think they get on Russell Wilson in that. I think the noise does not bother them. I think they go down and drive on this team. I have it 24-10. Carolina goes 6-0. 5-0.
5-0, yeah. They already had their bye week. Now we're going to get into San Diego at Green Bay. San Diego coming off of a very, very tough loss at home against Pittsburgh. Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers throwing 2 interceptions for the first time since the Civil War at Lambeau Field. I think Green Bay has a better game this week. San Diego's defense is not as good as St. Louis's defense. San Diego needs this win more, but I think Green Bay wins, moves to 6-0, stays undefeated.
You said it before in the show, Trey, and it's been said out through history. It's hard to win at Lambeau. San Diego looked good. They're competing. Antonio Gates looks great. They should have won that game as well, but they end up losing. Green Bay, easily.
Now we're going to get into a Super Bowl rematch, and the teams definitely don't look as good as they did that year. Baltimore at San Francisco. And you know what? This might be the hardest game to pick this week because both of these teams are that bad. But I'm going to go off of, I think Baltimore's going to make Colin Kaepernick look like he did that Super Bowl season just because of what they made Josh McCown look like last year. I think San Francisco, heavy dose of Colin Kaepernick to Torrey Smith, former Baltimore Raven, gets San Francisco the win. The Ravens drop to 1-5.
Ravens are really hungry for this win. They still have a belief that they can still compete, and Baltimore still has beliefs in them. I believe Kaepernick has struggles and will show more and more this game. And if he can't win against this hurt defense, which he won't, it's going to actually something like, can he be traded? We'll talk about them more later. They don't have any weapons, but Baltimore wins this game.
You know what? We'll see what happens. That one is the toilet bowl of this week. That and Miami and Tennessee and Houston and Jacksonville. Some games with bad teams facing off. Now we're going to get into my most intriguing game of the week, New England at Indianapolis. You might say Detroit was my upset pick of the week, but this is my real upset pick of the week. Andrew Luck and the Colts get revenge and beat the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots get handed their first loss of the season. The Colts win Sunday night.
New England's way too hot. And I didn't even like Tom Brady, but the New England Patriots just play way too good right now at this time of the year. They look stellar. There's minimal mistakes on that team. They found weapons in Deion Lewis. Easily, the Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts don't even look that good, Trey. How can you pick them? New England comes in, easy win. I even give you a score, Trey, 34-7.
Oh, well, you've picked some crazy upset picks in the past, so you don't have much room to talk about this one, even though I fully do. I actually have faith. I think that the Colts are going to win. Now, a Monday night game that's very important and very intriguing in the NFC East. The New York Giants head to Philadelphia to face the Eagles. The Eagles coming off their best game of the season last week. The Giants with a big last-minute drive from Eli Manning to beat the San Francisco 49ers. Victor Cruz, we still don't know if he's going to come back this week. But either way, I think that the Giants are the better team. I think the Giants go into Philly and prove that they are the class of the NFC East.
You know what, Troy? We're kind of getting the old NFL East. Even though they have, 3 losing teams right now, that division is going to be a tough one to win. With all teams, minus Dallas, playing pretty good. Dallas having Tony Romo, we're talking about them back in this race. However, it's at Philadelphia looked great. They're playing at home. It looks stellar. The Giants actually come back with this win because they wanted more, Trey. The Giants come back and win this game at Philadelphia, and I actually picked Philadelphia to actually win this division. But I think Giants come back and win this game.
So there you have it. That's our picks for this week. Before we get out of here, Cliff, do you have anything else to give our listeners, a parting gift for our listeners today?
Yes. Week by week, I always do this. I give a shout out to our listeners, and we want to thank you for listening to our shows. We are now on iTunes. Trey, tell them where they can find us on iTunes again.
iTunes, just go on your podcast app on your iPhone or just go on iTunes on your computer and search TDEXPN.
Yes, we're finally up, and we appreciate all the support you give us. However, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to turn your attention to my co-star. If you can find his Twitter page and actually look at some of the stuff he was saying, the audacity stuff, and he talks about the Bucs, you will find the hilarity in why his page is probably one of the funniest pages on Twitter, besides the IHOP account. It is hilarious. Please, if you have time, go on Trey's page and listen and the TD Experience and listen to watch all his tweets, and they're so funny. They're so funny to watch, ladies and gentlemen. My co-star has a hilarity. He's a comedian. He should be stand-up every night. He's a hilarious guy. And after that, go to IHOP's account and just have a fun. IHOP's hilarious. Have you looked at IHOP's choice?
I actually have not. I think I'm going to go on and follow them right now. I'm actually kind of insulted because my tweets aren't supposed to be funny. There's insight into the NFL, insight into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some of them are supposed to be funny. I mean, Baltimore, as I said, my tweet of the week. This is the TD Experience NFL Podcast tweet of the week. At TD Experience tweeted, the Baltimore Ravens are not a good football team. That's the tweet of the week. And that's what I'll leave you with this week. Go to TDEXPN.podomatic.com. Find us on iTunes. would mean the world to us. Give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Eventually, we want to see us in that top 100 on the Sports and Recreation Podcast on iTunes. You can find us there. Big things in the future. Continue to listen to us every week. Subscribe to the podcast so you'll get us every week. You're not even going to have to go out of your way to download it every week. If you subscribe on iTunes, it's going to show up on your computer or on your phone every week for you to listen to. So it'll be up before the Thursday night game. Listen to it before the Thursday night game to get you ready for the NFL weekend. And that's all we have for you today. We'll be back for you next week. As always, it'll be up before the Thursday night game. TDEXPN.podomatic.com. TDEXPN on iTunes. Follow Cliff on Twitter at TeddyBearCliff. Follow me on Twitter at TD Experience. Like the TD Experience on Facebook. And as always, that's Cliff. I'm Trey. We're out.
Later, guys.